Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Danielle. I'm your celiac neighbor. And it's been about 2 years since I had to go gluten-free, since I found out that I had celiac disease. So I want to share with you some of the mistakes that I made when trying to go gluten-free in the hopes that they can help you and maybe make your journey a little bit smoother. So the first mistake I made was trying to replace everything with a gluten-free equivalent, right? So like, hamburger bun. Let's find a gluten-free hamburger bun. Or cookies, like try to find gluten-free cookies. And really, at the beginning, it can be a bit overwhelming, like trying to make the transition to a gluten-free diet if you're trying to replace everything that you previously used to eat. So I found what worked best was, rather than trying to replace everything, was just focusing on the foods that really worked well for me that were naturally gluten-free. So for example, one of my favorite meals has always been chicken, potatoes, and vegetables like broccoli or something. So focusing on meals like that were just, already pretty much gluten-free. Maybe I had to look at certain spices or something like that, but we're generally gluten-free already. It just made it a lot easier. And then I would focus really on one item at a time. So, let's say, 1 week I would focus on replacing bread, like finding a good gluten-free bread. And maybe 2 weeks later I would try to find like a replacement for cookies or something, And some people find like they don't even really need replacements for certain things. Like I find there's certain things that I don't really care about all that much. Like it's really individual. So like an example is cereal. I just couldn't find a gluten-free cereal that really worked for me. So I just don't eat cereal. Like I eat other things. I found a great gluten-free banana bread. So if I feel, like having something really like carby and sweet in the morning, that's what I have. And like that works for me. So it's going to be really unique to everyone. But yeah, that's the general advice I would give, is at the beginning, instead of like trying to replace everything that you used to eat that had gluten in it, focus on the foods that you already know and enjoy that are naturally gluten-free. The second mistake that I made is thinking that gluten-free always means gluten-free. So what do I mean? So let's say you go to like a pizza place that makes regular, gluten wheat pizza, and they have a gluten-free pizza option. So if you have celiac disease, this option may or may not be safe for you. And here's why. Let's say they have like a dedicated, preparation area, and it's like a completely separate room, and it's away from everything, and, separate utensils, and maybe even a separate oven. Like that's probably fine. But if you're going to a pizza place, and picture they're making, all these regular wheat pizzas, and there's flour everywhere. And then, maybe they like wash their hands, change their gloves, and they make your pizza, on a surface that was just used to make regular pizza, or they use the same pizza cutter, or they put it in an oven right next to the gluten pizza. Like you could see how that could be a problem if you have celiac disease, because unfortunately cross contact is a real issue. And if, there's lots of flour like in the environment or in the air, it's really easy for it to get into your food. So this isn't to say that it's not possible ever to like eat a gluten-free item in a shared facility, but there is always a risk, particularly when a lot of flour is being used. So it's important to, ask questions and really do your due diligence and ask yourself, is this a situation where I'm likely to have cross contact or have an issue? And if it is, you may want to find another place to eat. The third mistake that I made was assuming that a product was gluten-free without actually checking. So let's say, you go somewhere and you're at a friend's house and they made this beautiful salad, and you figure like salad, what could possibly go wrong? So, let's say you don't see any croutons and it just looks like vegetables and dressing. What could possibly be the problem? So it's always important to ask and check out ingredients, because chances are most salads are probably fine, but sometimes people add, flour for texture to a salad dressing, or they might use malt vinegar. Malt vinegar comes from barley. For the most part, vinegar is fine, but malt vinegar is not okay for celiac disease. So it's really important to always ask questions and not assume. The other mistake that could easily be made is mistaking organic vegan, natural, or non-GMO for gluten-free. Because a lot of stores, they will put like all of the health foods in a certain section. So they might lump the gluten-free foods together with like, you know, the vegan foods or the natural or organic foods. So it's so easy to like see something on a shelf and see natural, and in your head, if you're not specifically used to looking for the words gluten-free, you might go, oh, like, you know, that sounds good, and like not really realize that, oh, but this isn't safe for me. Like it specifically has to say gluten-free. So that's something that you really have to get used to, is not letting the other buzzwords maybe mislead you that like this product is safe. You really do need to check ingredients and check that, you know, it says gluten-free on it. Now, this is kind of a sidebar, and I'll link a video below that really explains this well on food labeling. A food doesn't necessarily have to say gluten-free on it to be safe, but if it doesn't, it really is important to check the ingredients and see that it's safe. So there's a great video that was made by another channel called Robyn's Gluten-Free Living. So I will share that in the description below because it's really great, and she does a very good job explaining it. Another mistake is not reading labels. Okay, so we're talking about label reading. So a great example is a lot of times you'll have the same company make a gluten-free bread in addition to their regular bread line. So you might see, you know, let's say it's in the frozen bread section, because often, you know, these specialty breads will be like in a freezer if they're, you know, not a bread that they serve fresh, so or fresh, could be fresh too. But I've often seen this in like freezer sections. So you have like the same brand next to each other in the freezer. One is the gluten version and one is the gluten-free version. And if you're not careful and you're like used to buying that brand, it's so easy to pick up the gluten version and, you know, just eat that because you're used to that brand, so you assume it's safe. It's really important to check the label. Every label, every time. That's what I say to myself. Every label, every time, because even if it's a product you're used to, sometimes products change, right? Sometimes they might add an ingredient, even if it's not gluten. Maybe, you know, there's a certain other ingredient that bothers you. Like, for example, I have a problem with MSG. It gives me headaches, right? So it's really just good to be in the habit of reading labels, because products change, and because sometimes, you know, if a product looks similar to the gluten-free version, it's so easy to grab the wrong one. Like, I'm in a celiac disease support group on Facebook, and so many of the posts I see are about people accidentally grabbing the wrong version, the gluten version of their typical gluten-free product, because it's the same brand and the packaging might not be all that different. So another mistake that gets made is eating oats too early. So in the description below, I'll also put the Canadian Celiac Association's position on oats. I'll put a link to that page. But essentially, when people are diagnosed with celiac, the body is in a state where it needs to be healed, right? Like there's damage to the intestines, like to the villi, to those little finger-like projections in the small intestine, and those, for the most part, usually heal in most people with a gluten-free diet. So oats can be safe for a lot of people with celiac disease, but the Canadian Celiac Association recommends that oats not be introduced until healing has taken place and the blood work has normalized, and your doctor indicates to you that you're in a place where you can have them, where your blood tests and such have normalized and shown that healing has taken place. So a lot of people don't know that, and a lot of products with oats say gluten-free. So you might think, oh, like it's gluten-free, I'm good to go. But oats are one of those tricky situations, so it is important to look out for that. Now, on the subject of oats, oats are kind of controversial in general, and if you're new to the celiac community, you'll see why if you spend some time engaging in these types of conversations. But as I said, oats can be safe for celiac disease once you know, your body is in a position where it is, you know, in a healed enough state. But then you have to pick the right kinds of oats. So what do I mean? Oats are a crop that are often harvested with gluten grains, such as wheat, barley, and rye, right? So when this happens, these oats are subject to cross-contact and can often contain, you know, bits or particles or residue of these other grains. So in order for oats to be safe for celiac disease, they need to be prepared in such a way that they are safe. So either like a certain sorting process, or some are grown in a way that they're safe. So they should say gluten-free on them, and they should be from, like a reputable company that does do their oats safely. So a little bit of research will probably tell you that. So you do want to make sure you're eating the right kinds of oats. As I've said in previous videos, this this journey can seem, a little bit overwhelming at the beginning, but it really does get better as you go. I find that it helps to connect with others in the celiac community, which is why I started this channel. So I hope that you'll find it a source of support and comfort and inspiration. If you are newly diagnosed or have been diagnosed for a while, I'm curious, what are some of what are some of the mistakes that you made? Please let me know in the comments below, and I hope to see you again soon. I'm Danielle. I'm your celiac neighbor.